Hello everyone and good evening. I'm Don Arleth and welcome to our main edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. Tonight our focus is on Poland and the heavy flooding that severely impacted the south of the country, cutting off entire cities, inundating houses, forcing thousands of evacuations, and of course the human toll, leaving several dead. This is the aftermath of the severe downpours that rocked Central Europe last week. We'll have this and much, much more in just a moment, but first up, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. The new European Commission, Poland's Piotr Serafin, will be the bloc's budget commissioner. Halt, you're not welcome. To stop migrants, Germany reinstates controls on the borders. Russia needs more troops now. It will boost forces to 1.5 million. We start off tonight with the devastating floods that have affected southern Poland. While many smaller towns have already experienced the worst of the floods, the high water is now surging downstream, reaching lower valleys and larger cities. Our correspondent Marek Steele is in Brzeg on the Oder River. Marek, what is the situation like where you are in the city, and are there any other cities that are in danger at the moment?
Good evening, Don. Well, what you can see here is the preparations of the city of Brzeg for the high water, which will reach the city this night or in the early hours of morning. We see here lots of people, I would say tens if not hundreds of people, packing sand into bags, and later on with a human chain packing these bags on trucks, but not only trucks provided by the authorities. Actually, it is private people, residents of the city, who come here with trailers to pack these bags on trailers and take them there where they are most needed, so on the embankments of the city. From what I've spoken to the fire department here, the water levels are currently at 6 meters 90 centimeters, and they are expected to rise throughout the night to 7 meters and 10 centimeters, which could be deadly to some parts of the city. As we know, here in Brzeg, the city center, the historic Old Town, is rather safe, but the locations, the streets located lower, closer to the river, have already been flooded by the river Odra. This is a river into which flows the Nysa River, and we've seen the devastating events, pictures from, for instance, Nysa. So this city prepares for a wave, but further down the river is, for instance, Wrocław, the capital of the Lower Silesia region, and their water is expecting, the high flood water is expected to arrive tomorrow or on Thursday. Back to you.
Okay, still awaiting that surge there. Marek Steele reporting for us live. Thank you very much for that. Now, one of the places where the water levels rose drastically, flooding homes and streets, was the village of Skorogoszcz in the Opole region. Our reporter Ovidiusz Nicheja is now on the site and joins us live. Ovidiusz, what's the situation on the ground where you are?
Well, I am a few kilometers from Skorogoszcz in southwestern Poland. This is the first place where we're able to catch a stable mobile connection. Still, even at this late hour, we're just returning from there. We spoke to the firefighters. We heard that further upstream, the embankments are as soft as jelly, so there is a high threat of further settlements being flooded. Even now at this late hour, the evacuations of people from their homes continue. There's still no mobile connection, there's still no running water, and there's still no electricity in that place. So if you go further, a few kilometers down this road, what you will see are thousands of human tragedies, and more about this in my report.
The scale of the catastrophe is best seen from a bird's-eye view.
The water levels had been rising for the past few days, and then the whole area was flooded. Some victims lost all of their possessions in a matter of seconds. Małgorzata is one of them.
To lose nearly all your life's work, everything we've built and renovated, and now I just don't know. I can't bear to look at it.
The water cut up to 300 people off from the world in this village alone. Some who failed to evacuate in time had to be recovered and taken to safety by emergency services.
Our basement is flooded all the way up to the ceiling. It's not looking good.
We're helping out today in one of the flooded neighborhoods, where road access is no longer an option. Here, the water is about 2.5 to 3 meters deep. Plus, there's a strong current, so it's dangerous.
To make sure that those who stayed home survive, volunteers are providing basic necessities. A local bakery donated bread to the flood victims. A rescue team from a paramilitary organization then took care of distributing the aid.
The guys used a raft and rope bridge to reach the flooded neighborhood, where they delivered food and water and also evacuated some people.
The hardest part is seeing those people leaving behind their whole lives, fleeing to save themselves, and no longer thinking about anything else but survival.
Now the locals are waiting for the water levels to drop to return to their homes and start evaluating the damage.
This won't be over anytime soon. I have no words.
From Skorogoszcz for TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicieja.
It's not Christmas, but help is on the way. One of Poland's largest charity foundations, the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity, has donated nearly 10 million euro for assistance to the victims of the massive floods in southern Poland. The Polish government could also tap the European Solidarity Fund to secure additional relief.
Poles from all over the country are sending in care packages for flood victims. While NGOs are gathering the donations, the government is coordinating the deliveries.
We are using our government funds, including from the Industrial Development Agency, to coordinate aid initiatives, especially for places like Kłodzko and Nysa. 8 trucks with fresh water and power generators are being unloaded as we speak.
Each victim of the flood will also be entitled to a 2,300 euro emergency donation from the government, as well as low interest rate loans for larger renovations. A large chunk of aid is being delivered through the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity, run by Jerzy Owsiak.
We will use these funds, nearly 10 million euro, to purchase the most pressing necessities, topping the list provided by the victims and local governments. These lists will be crucial for us.
But Poland has not been left alone in dealing with the aftermath of the flooding. The European Commission confirmed the availability of the Civil Protection Mechanism and the Solidarity Fund for all member states struggling with the natural disaster. The spokesperson for the European Commission office in Poland, Piotr Wolski, explained to me how exactly the EU could provide its assistance.
During the emergency, we've got EU Civil Protection Mechanism. This is the way of mobilizing resources in case of emergency. Then we've got European Solidarity Fund, which can be used after the disaster. The member state may apply for maximum 6% of assessed losses.
According to Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Polish emergency services are well equipped to deal with the floods, so Warsaw is unlikely to apply for the Civil Protection Mechanism. But it could be tapping up to 1.5 billion euro from the Solidarity Fund, following final assessments of the extent of damages. The Polish Ministry of Funds and Regional Policy, in the meantime, is already working on special rules for EU-funded projects.
We have submitted an application to the EU for an extraordinary implementation and settlement of projects that use the European funds in municipalities affected by the flooding.
If there is one positive thing to take away from all of this, is the way that all Poles come together in a moment of difficulty. The victims of the flood are receiving not only help from ordinary Poles, but also from NGOs, the Polish government and the European Union. From Warsaw, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Well, it's not only Poland, but also Hungary remains on high alert as the fallout continues from heavy rain and flooding across Central Europe. Poland, Austria, and the Czech Republic have been hit the worst and have been the worst affected, but Hungary's tourist hotspot, Budapest, is also bracing for impact. Our correspondent Aaron Dahmen is there now and joins us live. Good evening, Aaron. Now, what's the situation like where you are on the ground, and when is this big surge expected to come through the heart of Budapest?
Good evening, Don. Well, this is nothing short of staggering what we're seeing here in terms of preparation. There are locals on the ground preparing these sandbags and preparing for the imminent floods that are set to come along this river. Now, let's take a look at this river, because this river, from those we've talked to here, is meant to rise by 3 metres by tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow this river will be 3 metres higher, and further down it connects to the Danube River. 500 kilometres of the Danube River is currently facing flood warnings, and add to that 1 metre it's rising every 24 hours. So what do those preparations look like? Let's take you down here, Don, where you can see the sandbags absolutely packing down this line here. Inside, sand and simple white plastic. That is the preparation. That is what they're hoping will rescue and save them from these floods. And just behind these sandbags, houses. That's how close this water could get. So we wait with bated breath as to just how bad these flood waters will be. Of course, it's meant to be sunny this week here in Budapest. It's meant to be fine weather. But the issue are the rising flood waters coming from the north. And even Prime Minister Viktor Orban is here in Hungary. He's staying. He was meant to be in Strasbourg, but he will not be presenting Hungary's plans for its EU Council presidency tomorrow. Instead, he's here as this city, this country waits for the worst.
Right. Well, hopefully they're preparing for the worst, but let's hope for the best. Aaron Dahmen reporting there from Budapest. Thank you very much. After a long wait, the list of commissioners is in. On Tuesday morning, Ursula von der Leyen unveiled her new European Commission lineup after a period of delay and speculation. With the uncertainty now behind us, the commissioners have been revealed, including key roles like budget, which has gone to Poland's Piotr Sarafin. For more on the details and what this means, let's now go live to our correspondent in Brussels, Sasha Farbach. Sasha, what can you tell us about all of these new big jobs?
Yeah, hi there. Good evening from Strasbourg here at the European Parliament. So indeed, as you said there, this was a moment, I just want to say for our viewers in the morning, actually the reveal was made to the press first, packed press room, and earlier that was actually skipped. Von der Leyen did not reveal these names or their portfolios to the College of the Parliament, which was supposed to happen, actually a big faux pas here. So let's just go as what we know right now. Key budget roles right now given to the classic countries. France, for instance, getting a very big portfolio there indeed. Executive Vice President also there. And also looking at classic again with Spain, getting that touted just transition, and also very much going to be in charge. They have competition. Now this is key because this is a competence that falls by the treaties directly under the Commission. But also, as we said, Piotr Sarafin as well from Poland will be in charge of budget. So that means very much corralling what that budget will look like over those next few years. Now we spoke to the current commissioner, also continued a loyal hand of Ursula von der Leyen, Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis, and asked him what this means for Poland and the region.
There I would like to congratulate Piotr Sarafin on his portfolio on budgets. Well, budget commissioner is indeed one of the key portfolios, especially given the fact that one of the first tasks of the next European Commission will be to prepare a proposal for the next multi-annual financial framework post-2027, which will shape European policies for the years to come.
So in that regard, it is a powerful role indeed, but it is looking like the classic positions, powerful portfolios have been given to the Western countries, including Spain and also France, with, of course, the Commission president being German. But at the same time, there's also a shift. There's new portfolios, and we've been talking about this for a long time, a new commissioner role, defense and space. Now, this is something that's going to be in conjunction with other types of roles here, but it is something that very much will be key in corralling on that European Defense Union. And that went to Lithuania's Andrius Kubilius, former Prime Minister and former MEP, and we spoke to him earlier and asked him about procurement, what that means. It could be a challenge for those first few several hundred days of his commissionership. Let's hear what he had to say.
Common procurement, common production, and so on and so on. This is what we need to do, because obviously it's very clear that defense market is very much fragmented. Because defense policy was and is still quite fragmented. So Lisbon Treaty is in Article 42, if I am correct, is saying very clearly, EU should move for common defense policy and common defense. So we need to start to do, to move to that direction.
And with, of course, Kaja Kallas as the new high rep, that is also a key role for the region, for the Baltics and the Central Eastern European region. Much still ahead. Grillings are ahead at the hearings, which will be in mid-October, potentially delaying all of this further to the full commission until likely December. That's the latest. Back to you in the studio, Don.
Okay, so still a little bit of waiting ahead of us. Sasha Farbach reporting from Brussels. Thank you. Halt, you're not willkommen, as Berlin embarks on a desperate bid to halt the flow of migrants into the country. Its decision to introduce tight controls on its land borders sparks the ire of its neighbors. Our correspondent Karolina Stoltzman is at the Polish-German border, crossing in Słubice, and as this is a 1-for-2 report, she's monitoring not only the situation on the border with Germany, but also the levels on the Oder River after the floods. Karolina, good evening. So can you tell us about the situation on both fronts over where you are?
Good evening, Don. Yes, so like we've established, these new border controls have come into life yesterday, and the consensus among the local community is that they are not much different from the stricter controls that have been introduced back in October last year. However, this familiarity doesn't mean that there isn't any negativity surrounding these new controls. That's actually the case. I've spoken to some of the local business owners today, and they all have expressed their disappointment and anger. They've all said that they're experiencing a very tough time when it comes to their businesses. They have less clients, and of course their revenue is also suffering. I've also spoken to the town mayor, and she agrees that the economic situation here is very difficult. But like you said, we've also spoken on the other pressing issue that Słubice is facing at the moment, which is the threat of flooding, because the river that you see behind me, Oder, has been one of the rivers that's been overflowing and flooding the southwestern regions of Poland. And the flood wave is supposed to come here sometime between Sunday and Monday. However, the rise of the water levels that is expected is still supposed to be contained within the levels that the city of Słubice can handle without suffering any major damage. I've been assured by the town's mayor that the crisis management team has been hard at work since Friday, making sure that the town and the local community is prepared for any possible scenario, including evacuation. However, of course, the situation is very dynamic and it will be changing. And of course, I will be here reporting on that for you. Thank you. Back to you.
All right, Karolina Stoltzman reporting from us from the German-Polish border. Thank you for that. Now, Putin needs more troops, and he needs them now. On Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree ordering the expansion of the Russian armed forces to 1.5 million troops. Meanwhile, earlier today, the European Parliament held a debate on continued aid for Ukraine. Here's more.
Putin's decree requires the recruitment of 180,000 additional soldiers. This may be difficult to accomplish, as Russia is already struggling to fulfill its recruitment targets. The government is trying to entice potential candidates with higher and higher bonuses, putting further strain on the budget. Last year, Moscow reported recruiting 400,000 soldiers, while the recruitment goal for 2024 is being set at nearly twice that. While Moscow is rushing to put more men on the front line, Ukraine's allies are fighting to ensure it has enough equipment. Continued assistance to Ukraine was the subject of a debate in the European Parliament. The aid is supported by the three parties backing the current European Commission, as well as by the Greens and the ECR group.
Our Ukrainian fellow citizens need us. We have to support them with weapons because they have to defend themselves, and we have to support them with a lot of humanitarian aid.
We need to show our resolve to do whatever it takes for Ukraine to win. When Ukraine wins, we win. When Ukraine loses, we lose.
More hardline groups oppose military aid for Ukraine, calling instead for immediate talks with Russia.
The constant demand for more and more weapons and ammunition for Ukraine will not decide the war in Ukraine's favor. There is no solution on the battlefield.
Ukraine needs peace. Realistically speaking, this peace will not be a just peace.
According to the Kiel Institute, the total assistance of European countries to Ukraine so far amounts to about 110 billion euros, of which some 40 billion have been provided through EU structures. Continued aid for Ukraine enjoys the support of a significant majority in the European Parliament.
A long time waiting, but the preliminary list is in. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has announced her choice of candidates to take up key positions in the European Commission. However, not all of them are guaranteed a job. The potential commissioners will need approval from the European Parliament to assume their roles. And now, here joining me to discuss the selectees and their possibilities is Sofia Rusak from the Center for European Policy Studies. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on World News Tonight.
Good evening.
So I'd like to start off with the biggest industrial and economic jobs that will go out to interventionist countries, Spain, Italy, and France. They've called for more joint spending, looser budget deficit rules, and a bigger role for industrial policy. Now, is this any surprise to you, or is this potentially resulting from what we saw in recently from the Draghi report?
Well, look, also if you've had a look at, the priorities that she has outlined in July, and which is, of course, the basis also for her college structure now, then it becomes clear priorities that she set for this commission are very different than they were in 2019, and thereby very economy heavy, right? I mean, almost all almost all member states had indicated before that they would like to have an economy or finance portfolio. Of course, they cannot all have those, but what we see is when it comes to priorities and also now the structure of the college, that of course competition, growth, prosperity, these are really the keywords for the next commission, whereas 2019 it was much more about green issues, which are still there, but I mean the Green Deal is largely adopted and now needs to be implemented, so it's not dead and dusted as said by some, but it is much less dominant in the overall structure, priorities, and therefore also structure of the next commission.
Now, how much do you think that the Draghi report actually influenced the decisions on some of these key positions? Was it more of a wake-up call, sounding the alarm? I mean, we know about the money that needs to be kind of redeployed, about 5% of European GDP that needs to be redeployed into the economy here to be able to keep pace with the United States and the world's second largest economy like China. So is that part of the decision-making here?
Look, I think that the Draghi report is very important, and Ursula von der Leyen took, of course, notice of this and will work further with this. But I mean, when it comes to the portfolios, then there are portfolios which which sound different with every term, but are essentially covering a wide range of issues that the EU is covering, from agriculture to cohesion, economy, budget, enlargement, fisheries. You see, these are kind of classical portfolios that are covered with every commission. Again, the titles, they are a little bit different, and the let's say the weighting is a bit different depending on also the post of the executive vice president and what kind kind of topics they cover. And of course, here we see, lots of prosperity, industry, we see cohesion and so on. But it's not all about economy, right? It's also lots about defense, it's about security. It is still about, that Spain's commissioner, the executive vice president, she will take on and lead, the clean and green transition. So there are, lots of priorities that need to be covered. Even if the tone is a strong economic leaning one, there are, of course, more priorities for the Commission to cover.
Right, yet it was stated that this will influence the drive to decarbonize. I think you just said so yourself. The EU is focused on much more for the last 5 years. So will the focus now be on restoring growth and resilience to otherwise stagnant regions and countries?
Yeah, again, I think the big lines, the three big baskets, if you wish, that Ursula von der Leyen is also repeating always is first, the economy, competitiveness, enhancing growth across the EU. The second one is defense and security, and the third one is democracy and rule of law. And regards the third basket, I'm so far a little bit skeptical because I think that in her last term she, has not been particularly tough on this. But when it comes to the first two topics, then for sure we will see a very strong Commission on this. And this is also, what member states want and what member states expect the EU to be very strong on now.
I'd like to ask you about Poland's Piotr Serafin. He's been tapped to manage the EU's budget, including drafting the new one for the years 2028 to 2034. What's your take on this announcement? Is this good for Poland? Do you think this is which position Poland would prefer? What are your thoughts?
Well, look, it's a very important portfolio, no? And Poland is one of the big 5 EU member states. And if you look at how posts were distributed, then you'll see that when it comes to the executive vice presidents and the president herself, of course, she's German, all 5 big member states have either one of the executive vice presidential posts, the presidential post, or the fifth one then is budget. And I think, it is important. Member state size does play a big role in this portfolio allocation, and budget will become important. Why? Because the MFF, so the financial framework of the European Union, runs out in 2027, and the Commission, that is basically one of the first things that the Commission will have to do now that it's in office, hopefully in December, is to start working on a first draft for the next financial frame, which will run maybe again over a course of 5 years, but probably at least 7 years, but at least 5 years. So a big chunk of work ahead, and therefore a big responsibility with the budget commissioner, because as you know, creating budget and allocating budget lines is effectively setting policy priorities.
What about some potential contenders that could be either held up or maybe not nominated? Are there any particular nominees at this point that fit that bill?
The thing is that this commission, this tableau, as suggested by von der Leyen, is now going to go into the hearings in the Parliament, where the responsible committees will check whether those commissioners are fit for the job, meaning whether they're fit for being a commissioner and whether they're fit for this particular portfolio. Now, the idea here is really that they weed out those candidates which are unfit. And yes, there have been a few names floated already which might have it a bit more difficult than others. And that is, for instance, Hungarian's candidate, which is also the current incumbent, Olivier Valheri. And he upset the parliament in the past term with a few things, for instance, by, being quite, outspoken, the extended arm of Prime Minister Orban when it comes to the war in Ukraine. Also by calling the MEPs idiots, these things that don't fly very well with the parliament. He's expected to get a very tough grilling and potentially not survive. But as you see, also the portfolio that he got from Ursula von der Leyen, health and animal welfare, particularly the second part, animal welfare, is of course, let's say he's probably not terribly happy, neither Orban, with this allocation. And then there's another one which is this maybe having a tough time, is the Maltese candidate, simply because he is, and that is quite unusual. What we see usually with these commissioners is that they have a very political background, right? They're often ministers, sometimes even prime ministers, members of parliament. But this candidate, he has been only the minister of Malta, and so MPs have here already also raised concerns already if he is, fit for that job.
Yep. Well,
and then, as you know, also the Italian candidate Fitto.
Right.
I don't think that his competences is questioned here, but what is questioned is that a candidate from the far right ECR group got one of the very important executive vice presidential posts.
Okay, so still some question marks and definitely still some time ahead. Sofia Rusak, Center for European Policy Studies, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of World News. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time. Good night.